Hello and welcome to UATV. You're watching Head to Head and I'm Tamara Rosevan. NATO has expelled 7 diplomats from Russia's mission to the alliance and blocked the appointment of 3 others over the nerve agent attack in Britain earlier this month. To discuss this, we are joined in the studio by Ivan Us, an associate expert in the field of international economy at Ukrainian Prism Foreign Policy Council. Hello, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hello.
So that was quite a tough response from NATO.
So actually, after this case, so after the fact when the United Kingdom officially, because the Prime Minister Theresa made the Minister of Foreign Affairs, or the Foreign Secretary, if we are talking about the United Kingdom, made a statement that Russia is directly organized this act of terrorism, and they looked the situation not as an attempt to murder Mr. Skripal. They think that it was chemical attack to the United Kingdom, against the United Kingdom. Of course, after such sanctions, they should make the other steps of reaction. The first reaction, normal reaction, when you sent out several diplomats. That's why they immediately start to think about that. But as I understand from the situation that we saw during the last several days, they decided that the response should be not only from the United Kingdom. The response should be from a lot of countries that supporting United Kingdom. That's why, if we look at the history of last several days, when our first deputy head of our parliament, Irina Gerashchenko, was asked whether Ukraine sent out Russian diplomats, she said no, because we need some talks with Russia, because she shouldn't know that.
Right, now before we get into the kind of how Ukraine has responded,
so
obviously the international community has been very strong about this, and I believe NATO General Jens Stoltenberg had very strong response to that. I believe we have a soundbite for you now. Maybe we can listen to that.
As I said, we are not changing our approach to Russia, which is still based on a dual-track approach, meaning strong deterrence, defense and dialogue, and we will continue to prepare for the next meeting of the NATO-Russia Council.
So how do you think that next meeting is going to go down?
Really situation very strange, because on the one hand, not only NATO, but a lot of countries, as far as I remember, as of this moment, 24 countries announced that they sent out 139 Russian diplomats. So majority of them will be sent from the United States of America, then 23 from the United Kingdom, and 13 from Ukraine. Actually, Ukraine appeared in the third place. But nevertheless, we see that the main players is the United States of America and the United Kingdom.
It's very interesting, because the UK Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson said that this was the largest expulsion of Russian diplomats since the height of the Cold War. So this is the largest kind of tense standoff that we've seen so far, the West responding in a very concise manner.
Yes, but as I said, after statement that it was not an attempt to murder person, it was chemical attack against the United Kingdom. So actually, it's something like to accuse Russia to shot a rocket into the United Kingdom, approximately of the same level. That's why, of course, I expected to see serious reaction from the United Kingdom, and the fact that it's the largest quantity of diplomats that sent out since the Cold War period, actually, since even whole history of relationship between Moscow and London, as for me, it was natural, just because after such accusation, serious accusation, the United Kingdom should demonstrate several steps, because accused Russia of chemical attack and doing nothing, or sent 1 or 5 diplomats, it
certainly wouldn't send a very good message to Putin, who...
Absolutely. We should understand simple fact that before the elections in Russia, a lot of people said that the Western country are strictly against of his re-electing for the 4th term, but a lot of people talking about 5th term, because during Medvedev presidency he was the prime minister. So practically since the year of 2009 or 1999, when he became prime minister, till now he's still in power, so more than 18 years. Of course, the Western world strictly against of that. That's why they tried to explain that during last several years.
So do you think that's this connected? Do you think this tough response is connected to Putin being re-elected again?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's, as they said, that they against, they want now to demonstrate that, because one thing when you only give your words and nothing else, the horse of another color when you do something. When you really at first send diplomats, then we don't know what will be with the property of Russian oligarchs in London. Because yesterday I hear information that they try to check some of that property at the question of its legacy, because they adopt a new law that gives the right to their internal forces to check any property that could be purchased for money, origin of which under the question. Yes,
right, so kind of freezing Russian oligarch assets in the UK is a very strong step. Now, we've also heard of calls from various organizations and various analysts to boycott for the West, to boycott FIFA 2018 World Cup. Now, that seems like a step that could be potentially taken. What do you think?
Absolutely. First of all, we should understand the fact, if this World Cup, football cup, will not be in Russia, it will be in the United Kingdom, in England. We know that's such a decision. And according to several persons, for example, according to Mr. Gordon, Ukrainian journalist, England received something like an official request to be prepared for that. So Mr. Gordon directly said that it will be no World Football Championship in Russia. A lot of people not again agree with him, but actually he said he's more than sure. All these steps, as for me, it's steps in the direction of that situation, when after all that accusation, after all that rumors that at first some officials will not be in this World Cup, because every day we hear about new statement of some officials. Today I hear from Iceland, I remember, that officials will not be at this World Cup. And if several football teams united, because if one team said that they will not be in this World Cup, this team will be disqualified immediately. But if a lot of teams said that we do boycott of this World Cup, like several days ago was a competition in Russia and Tumen in biathlon, where Ukraine and Czech Republic and the United Kingdom ignored it.
That's right. And what kind of international response did that garner? Did that kind of reach different international media? Was that heavily featured? Did that make an impact?
So we will say about impact, because as for me, starting from annexation of Crimea and actually changing of the map in the center of Europe, that of course create a serious irritation in the Western world, because they have an order after the Second World War, and this order was violated. At first it happened in Georgia in 2008, now it happened in Ukraine. And of course they built their attitude to Russia as a negative, and saying that with every passing year this tension will be increased. Furthermore, they said that Putin should not be a president. That's why in this case, we increased our pressure. Putin becomes a president. So that's why at first we see that reaction, but I'm sure that it's not the only reaction. I tried to say that, that after this beginning of the conflict, sometimes USA and the European Union created new package of sanctions, and this packages happened once in half a year or so. At the last several months, we hear about 5 or so these packages.
Well, we heard that Donald Trump, the U.S. president, he announced one of the largest. He announced He basically sanctioned a lot of Russian individuals and companies, including the intelligence sector, the Russian intelligence sector, for cyber attacks, and as a result of military intervention in eastern Ukraine. So it's all connected. There seems to be a response.
Yes, and though the situation with diplomats and new packages of sanctions, all that part of big game between West and Russia, when West want to say to Russia that you violate the global order and you will be punished. Russia tried to say that they to independence that they can talk with them at the equal manner, but excuse me, if your GDP is approximately 1.5 or 2 of the global GDP, try to play with West as with the same, it's actually a big mistake. And now,
so you think the Kremlin's kind of narrative or even its game, it's not going to get them very far, considering that the West has already taken so many steps.
West, actually, just from the beginning of those sanctions, I remember that the USA ambassador, Mr. Pfeiffer, while giving an interview, said that if we try to analyze all possible sanctions and estimate the current sanctions, it's probably 4 from 10. So if 10 it's maximum sanctions, now we have 4 mark. But it means that we have 5, 6, 7 until 10.
Yeah, and there's certainly room
yes.
to grow. I think that's a very positive note to leave on. Thank you so much for joining me today in the studio.
Thank you.
So that was Ivan Us from Ukrainian Prism Foreign Policy Council. You're watching UATV.